Welcome to another embarkation video, and today I'll be boarding P&O Arcadia for a 3-night cruise over to Zeebrugge. And as the duration of the cruise is short and I've been to Zeebrugge and the surrounding areas a couple of times before, I'll be spending the whole duration on board the ship. And if you've watched any of my other embarkation videos from Southampton, you know that I usually stay at a hotel the night before. Unfortunately, P&O have given us the utterly ridiculous time to board the ship of 3:15. And I really didn't fancy spending the morning hanging around in Southampton, so I decided to drive from home. Arcadia is one of the smallest ships in the P&O fleet, so I'd like to think by the time I get there, hopefully around about 2 o'clock, that I'll be able to get on board the ship straight away. But on previous cruises on Iona and Ventura, I've been forced to wait outside until my allotted boarding time. This animation from the very clever people over the cruise globe shows the exact route Arcadia took on our cruise. And I'll leave a link in the description below so you can go and track your cruises for free. And I'll leave a link to the cruise maps where you can head over to purchase an actual map of your cruise. And if you use the code ALIVE in the Parks, you'll receive 10% off your order. And I chose to park my car at the Eastgate Street multi-storey car park, which is only going to be £19 for the weekend. And while the walk to the Queen Elizabeth II terminal isn't too long from there, I decided to hop in an Uber, which cost £8. And docked to Ocean Terminal was Arcadia's sister ship, P&O Britannia, which is one of the 2 ships in the P&O fleet I've yet to sail on, but hopefully I'll be rectifying that soon. If you've sailed on Britannia, please let me know in the comments below what you think of the ship. And just past that were some minis being unloaded from a car transporter which looked like a scene from an advert. And then as we pulled in, I got my first glimpse of P&O Arcadia. I arrived at the terminal slightly later than expected, around 2:15, which was still an hour earlier than my allotted boarding time. The terminal is like a ghost town, and pretty much all the other passengers are already on board the ship. I could probably have arrived an hour earlier and still got on without any trouble. But what I find really frustrating is that Princess, who are another Carnival Corporation cruise line, don't have any boarding times. So when I boarded the much larger Regal Princess 3 weeks before this at the exact same terminal, I was on board the ship at 11:20. There just seems to be a lack of consistency across the Carnival Cruise Line brands. But rant over, I was now looking forward to getting on board the ship. And as we got on the ship, so much later than usual, the cabin was actually available straight away. I've already made a cabin tour video and I'll leave a link to that here. But I'll just say here that I was very impressed with the size of the room. It was nice and light and perfectly clean. And I do really appreciate having a sofa to sit on. It also came with a decent sized balcony, and I was nicely surprised to see that it also came with a bath. And just across the harbour was the beautiful Regal Princess, which, as I mentioned, I was on only a few weeks before. And if you'd like to see what that ship's like, I'll leave a link here to my vlogs from that cruise. And as the weather was so perfect, I decided to spend a little bit of time exploring the open decks. And as I was starting to feel a little peckish, I popped over to the Belvedere, which is the ship's buffet, to grab some food. I just went for some cold meats, some cheese and some salad. And after that, I headed over to the Oasis Salon and Spa. And even before you go in, on the left hand side is the sauna. And here you can find the hydro pool the treatment rooms and the relaxation room. Which has cold drinks, teas and coffees and plenty of lounges to chill out on. I then headed to the very popular Crow's Nest for a drink. And shortly after, everyone stopped what they were doing to see Britannia sail away. The weather when sailing away from Southampton can often be very dubious. But on this day I had no complaints, I really enjoyed the warm sunshine. And while P&O aren't exactly renowned for their raucous sailaway parties, this was one that I really enjoyed. There were lots of people really getting involved and having a great time. Whether this was down to the sunshine or it being a short duration party cruise, I'm not sure. It was just something I was pleased to be a part of. And once the sail away party was complete, I then had time to walk around the open promenade deck. And over in the distance you could see Portsmouth and the Spinnaker Tower. And then we had just enough time to have a drink in the Spinnaker bar before going to dinner. We had freedom dining on this cruise, which meant that we could eat whenever a table became available. I was given a pager which would buzz when the table became available, which didn't take too long. Although as we were seated towards the end of service, we were actually put on a table meant for 6. And the waiter quickly brought over the welcome aboard menus. Feel free to pause the video should you wish to study the menu further. There's also the wine list and the signature selection, which is an enhanced choice of starter, main or dessert that does incur an additional fee. And I did notice that the price of one of the bottles of wine had been hastily increased. And one thing I was really impressed with was the level of service. There were more than enough waiters and you didn't have to wait long for your food or a drink to arrive. For my starter, I went with the chicken balti samosas, which came with a spiced mango gel, kachamba salad and a tangy mango chutney. The samosas were nice and crunchy and it worked really well with all the mango. While my other half went for the pork and black pudding Scotch egg, which came with baby gem leaf and an English mustard aioli. And she said that she really enjoyed this, and for a main course she went with a roasted prime rib of beef and Yorkshire pudding, which came with parmesan herb new potatoes, sticky braised red cabbage, green beans and a rich red wine dew. While I went with a toad in the hole, which I'll be honest was a complete letdown. My first issue was it really wasn't a substantive amount of food for a main course. I really wouldn't call these sausages, these were more like chipolatas. And usually Lincolnshire sausages are nice and herby, but unfortunately these were bland and tasteless. For my dessert I decided just to go for the fresh melon, while my other half went for the cheese plate, which had 4 types of cheese, biscuits, crackers, apple chutney and grapes. The headline performer in the Palladium Theatre really wasn't to my taste. So I decided to spend the rest of the evening down in the Monte Carlo casino. Where after a couple of small wins I decided to head back to the cabin to get some kit. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. I'll have many more P&O Arcadia videos to come.